Now, Iskano Gagwego, thank you for coming tonight for an evening of history, art, and prose. Before I introduce our distinguished guests, I would like to tell you that there are some index cards and some pens. If you have any questions that is relevant to tonight's discussion, you can write those down, put them in the basket, and if time allows, then we can get to those questions. Okay? So I'd first like to introduce Mr. Carson Waterman. Who hasn't seen his paintings all over Salamanca? I mean, they're all over the buildings. Mr. Waterman is just a national treasure to our nation. We truly appreciate him. He has paintings in New York State museums, the Smithsonian American Art Museum, and other several public and private collections. He was recently honored for his work, and his exhibit is on display right now at our Cultural Center. Mr. Waterman's work is important in preserving our Native American heritage. Next, we have Mr. Stephen Gordon, who just finished his third book, Cold Spring, Our World is Changing. He also is a recipient of a NAMI Award, which is Native American Music Award Lifetime Achievement. He retired in 2022. He was a performer, played for 37 years. And he is very instrumental. I don't know if everybody knows this, but he's very instrumental in bringing the lacrosse game back to the Allegheny Territory. Lastly, we have Mr. Maurice John Sr. Maybe you all remember the Bearskin. He successfully ran this business, which housed SNOVA, which was an organization, the Seneca Nation organization for visual arts. He demonstrated that the Senecas were capable of developing and growing free enterprise on territory. Something else maybe you all didn't know, that he was a very accomplished ball player and played basketball on a traveling team. Mr. John set the example for young Seneca men to play hard with teamwork and dedication to represent our nation. So, thank you very much for coming this evening. So tonight, we are going to hear a little bit of history about these gentlemen and how they got their start. So, Mr. Waterman, how did you get started in art?
Let's see, I'd like to first mention or comment about art and its importance to all cultures. But my first introduction to any kind of art was when I was at the Thomas Indian School. I was 5 years old and in the youngest building, and the age group was from 5 to maybe it was 4, because I was 4 actually, 4 to maybe 8. So I didn't have any introduction to art at home. I don't remember seeing anything. I don't think we had a television. But anyway, these boys, the older boys, were drawing. They had pencil or crayons and paper. So I went over and tried to join with them, and they were making all these noises because they were drawing war stuff. They were making explosions, and it looked like fun, and I tried to join them, but they kind of ignored me. I was too young. So that's what I recall about the beginning of what art is. So I continued drawing and doing art as time went, and I excelled in art in high school. That was my major. I wasn't very good at anything else. I was a pretty poor student, actually. So I excelled with the art and sports. So then in the mid-'60s, I finished art school. And at that time, what was going on was the Kinzua Dam was happening. And so I was aware of it, but I didn't really know a lot about it. But it wasn't until I recognized and I realized what was happening. When I finished art school, the Vietnam War was going on. I was in art school, and they were drafting students out of colleges that had C grade and lower averages. And so I was safe because my average in art school was A plus all the time, and it's because I really enjoyed what I was doing. And one of the things that I learned that kind of struck home was one of the questions that was asked was, what is art? So there, they mentioned that art is self-expression, and that hit home to me. And I started thinking about who I am, and then I began doing art relating to me. That's why today I focus on mostly strictly Native American history and culture. At the time, I began doing what little I knew at the time about our history and about our culture, because I wasn't raised in a longhouse. I wasn't able to speak Seneca. In my house, we didn't speak Seneca. My father was Onondaga. He could speak fluent Onondaga, but nobody spoke. So anyway, I was watching to see what was going to happen, and with the Kinzua Dam, that happened. I finished art school, and then I was drafted for Vietnam. So then I decided that I talked to my mother. I told her the Vietnam War was not popular and I didn't want to go. She suggested that I go because all her brothers joined the service in the Second World War. So it was hard for me to kind of like refuse, and I thought about running to Canada. So then I decided I was going to see if I could use my art skill to get through the military. And through basic training and infantry training, advanced infantry training, I did drawings and portraits of sergeants' girlfriends and wives, and I got some benefits out of that. But it didn't stop me from Vietnam. I still had to go to Vietnam, and I still became a grunt. A grunt, we call it, we're infantry. And I was with a line company, it's called, and we were in combat. So I went through that about 7 months. But during times when we got to rest a little bit and to write letters, instead of writing letters, I did drawings. Through a series of really good luck on my part, the right people saw my drawings. They took my sketch pad, and the division commander saw what I was doing, and he said, I don't care what this man is doing. I want him back here in the base camp, the division base camp, to work for us. So that's what I did. And I did a lot of artwork, which is on display now in the Culture Center. But what I'm talking about here is, at that point, I realized that art is so important, and it was so important to me, and it's so important to other cultures and countries and people, that at that time, that art, I believe, saved my life. Because I was in the jungle for 7 months, being fired on, and after that, I was not being fired on anymore. I produced art for the Public Information Office, and then when I finished that, or when I finished my term in service, I came home and went back to school and began teaching art at the Cuyahoga Community College in Cleveland, Ohio. And Cleveland at the time was a community that was that was very focused on art, because the American Greeting Card Company was there in Cleveland, and they're still there, by the way, and still producing artists who produce greeting cards still today. So I worked with them for a short while. I did freelance work for them. And then the Seneca Nation decided to build or open its education program. And my younger brother and his girlfriend came to see me in Cleveland, and they were just starting our Seneca Nation organization or Seneca education program. And they said, come back home and work with us. And I said, yeah, I did. I want to. So I called my boss. This is on a Friday. And I told him I'm not coming Monday. I'm leaving. And I picked everything up and I came home. And we started working with the kids at the time at Gowanda High School or grade school. And we developed that more and more. And as these kids started producing work, we went higher in age groups, and we got into the high school age group, and then we began showing the artwork that our people can do. We began exhibiting in our council chambers before our counselors went to start the council. And they saw the artwork, and they said, man, now is the time to start our museum. They had the Seneca Museum in mind, but it was on a back burner. So when they saw this artwork being produced, they said, let's do it now. So they did that, and they hired me, and I came out here to Allegheny and worked with the Seneca-Iroquois National Museum. And I don't regret one bit when I left, because when I was teaching and the opportunity to come and do the artwork, I got married, and I had a daughter. She was 1 year old at the time, and I thought, I'm going to go and start and see what I can produce with my art skills and my abilities. So I just went on my own. I quit with the education program, and I began producing art. So it was very difficult at times, but when times get tough, then it kind of toughens you. There's all kinds of cliches about that, but it really helped me. It really pushed me to do what I needed to do. And so today I have this, one thing I want to mention too. In art school, I was introduced to self-discipline. There was who became one of my instructors. We became really good friends. I helped him build these sculptures and so on. I learned a lot from him. But what I did really rubbed on me was self-discipline and a real energy for focusing on art. And that's what I always do. And when people comment, and I really appreciate the comments I get and so on, but I always tell them, well, that's all I know. So, and it's a good thing. When you express yourself about things, you can cause things to happen. You can help things along, and that's what we've been doing. And I want to continue that as well. The children today, there's artists like Steve Gordon and others. I want to get together and produce some children's books, books that we can provide to our own school system, because there isn't anybody out there producing our cultural needs, because they don't know it. We know it, and it's our responsibility. And I'm looking forward to getting into that. I want to do that with, there's some technicians like Maurice John and others that can do video. I want to get into that kind of thing. And want to see what we can do about helping our children learn who they are. One of the questions we always see and hear is what kind of Indian are you? Are you an Indian with the dot on the forehead, or are you the Indians that wear the feathers? You know, so we need to have our children know the difference when they start school, before they start school. So, so let's anytime you can support what we're doing, our culture center, our museum, and anybody at home, talk it up with your children. Get everybody interested in what I'm talking about. And that's what I've been doing, and that's what I'll do until I can't anymore. And there's so much to art and so much to part of life. One of the things I was thinking about, and I was thinking, should I tell them a joke?
Yeah.
Well, maybe not.
Not a
So I'm going to
nasty one. You're known for nasty ones.
So I'm going to end with that. Maybe later we'll. There used to be a time when we'd all, after a meeting like this, then we'd hit to the Red Lantern or something. And one thing I wanted to mention is, let's see. I didn't drink for 11 years, and then I turned 12. So anyway, that's a joke that I can tell you.
Good job.
Next, we're going to hear from Mr. Gordon. So,
Is that my cue?
yeah, had the alarm set for you to start talking.
Mr. Pike.
I'm going to stand for my portion, only because I've got kind of a low voice. So hopefully you won't mind. The question is, how did I get into writing? The first thing that is proper, I honor my mother and my father, Alberta and Arthur Gordon. They were my first teachers, as most parents are our first teachers. My mother was fluent in the Seneca language. She always told me that she could see the world was changing already. So she remembered and told me of a time when she first went to elementary school in Robinson Run. She said she didn't know how to speak English. So she was asking her friends in Seneca how to do things. And when the teacher heard my mother speaking, she rushed over to her, grabbed my mother's hand and took a wooden ruler and she slapped my mother's palm. She said, "We do not speak the language of a savage in this school." And my mother was just horrified that she couldn't communicate and say that's the only language she knew. And when she went home to her grandmother, she didn't tell her grandmother what had happened, because she knew what my great-grandmother would do. She would have told her, "You don't go there no more." Because in my great-grandmother's house, only Seneca was spoken. She said that English language you can leave at the driveway. We don't use it here. So the love of my mother, she knew the world was changing. And she also knew that I didn't like what we used to eat in Cold Spring during that time. I didn't like eating potatoes every single meal. I didn't like grease on the potatoes. I didn't like salt pork. I didn't like those things that were an everyday staple of our lives. So she told me, "You better get a good education so that you can get a good job, because you don't like to eat what we eat." And that always stuck in my mind. As strange as that sounds, that was an inspiration. My father was a voracious reader. He used to come to this library here and he'd bring a book bag with him, because he would take out 12 books at a time. And he would read probably 2 to 3 books a day. My dad would he wanted to read, he would start here and just go down the line. And he had a friend named Donald Conjocity, He said, you know, Art, he said, if those were medical books you've been reading, you'd be a doctor by now. So just seeing my dad reading, that put an interest in me to read. And so I started reading. And I became fascinated with the different subjects that people, and I wanted to be like that. I wanted to be able to put my thoughts down in a book or some kind of paper. But I didn't do that for a long, long time. The trauma in my life started in 1964. I was 11 years old, and they told us that we were leaving. We had to leave our home. We had to leave Cold Spring. I couldn't understand a reason why. My great-grandmother, Hannah Abrams, was standing in her garden when her grandson told her, he said, Grandma, the United States government is moving us off from our land. She said, why? Why do we gotta move? Everything that we need to survive is here. We're on the best fertile soil. We have the purest water. We have fish in the river. We got deer in the woods. Everything that we could possibly want is right here. We don't bother nobody. Why do we have to leave? And she said, I won't go. They're not going to move me. That next following winter came, and my grandmother passed at age 92. So true to her word, she did not move. But they removed her from her resting place and moved her to a different cemetery. So they moved my grandmother too. So that kind of trauma that my mother witnessed, that my father lived through, that I lived through, I felt that pain. And that pain in here began to turn to anger and bitterness. So what I did was, I was always taught that you talk or you write about what you know. I know what it's like. I know what it's like to have a pain inside that doesn't go away. Cold Spring haunted me. My homestead haunted me. When I went to college, I kept thinking about it, and I had this anger in me. I wanted to do something. I didn't know what. I felt like a militant person. That's what they called members of the American Indian movement at the time. Militant Indians. That's how I felt. And that brewed in me. So I started writing. I started writing about what that was about, trying to capture that, to take it out of me. And that's what I finally did. I carried this book around with me in my mind for 20-some years. And I didn't know what to do with this manuscript. And one day, and this is how strange things do happen, my neighbor, Randy John, happened to be a publisher. And I said, hey, Randy, I got a manuscript about Cold Spring, and I've been carrying it around for years. He says, I'll print it. I thought, wow. I handed him the manuscript. 1 week later, 2019, he put it in a book. And I can tell you this is true. Now you can put your emotion, everything that you want in a book. And now I can close it. And I can put it down or put it on a shelf. Now it's in here. All of that anger I put in here. Now I can put it over here. That's the power of transference, that I can put everything in there. It's gone away. I'm no longer an angry man. Different ones have asked me, they said, are you still upset that your mother was treated that way? I said, I'm upset every time I go to the casino and I see a long line waiting for the buffet, and I can go to the exclusive section and say, it's our turn now. Now it's our turn. So I've got no more bitterness in me. I took a second opportunity to write my second book. This one I just wrote for me. All through my life I've been writing, so I collected stories that I used to hear, and I put them in this second book. It's called Just a Few Stories. A few stories that just stuck in my mind, and I put them in this one book here. And I can tell you, everything I write, it's not fake news, it's real. It's the real deal. And then my third book just got finished. I just finally got it. It's now for sale. I got this last Thursday. This is the one that I had the hardest time writing. This is the one when I used to go to see my grandfathers, when I first went there to them. I went to them in 1972, and I started asking them questions. I wanted to find out who I was, because the school system never told me who I was. The school system never said a word about the Seneca people. I had to find out in college who I was. I took Indian Identity 101. I took Seneca Language 101. And I was like Dorothy of the Wizard of Oz. Everything that I was looking for outside was back home. My grandfathers were waiting for me. So when I came back and started talking to him, my uncle, my great uncle, he says, "What are you doing, writing a book?" I said, "No, I'm not writing a book," because he didn't want that. He said, "This is ours. Nobody needs to know." So this third book I held back. I kept holding it back. I didn't want to betray my grandfathers. But then somebody convinced me, this book belongs to you people. This book belongs to the kids. They need to know. Who's going to tell them if I don't tell them? In the language we say, "Henjiswahonda." That means pass on your knowledge. And that's what I'm doing. I'm passing on my knowledge to you guys. And I had an argument with my grandfathers one time. They tried to tell me about one of our most sacred ceremonials. And I said, "Grandpa, I read about that." I said, that's already in the books. He said, "Well, then when there's ceremony tomorrow, why don't you do it if you know all about it?" I thought, I just read about it. He says, "Is that all you know is what's in the book?" Yeah, I guess. So they started teaching me. 7 years I walked with my grandfathers. They're the ones who put the soul back into Steve Gordon. I'm their grandson, Cornelius DeForest Abrams, my grandfathers. I honor them with these books. And that's what you can do when you write. You can honor people. Honor, it's all about honor. I honor Mo John in my book. I talk about when he was our leader. I honor Dennis Bowen, Mike Jimerson. I talk about all these people in this book. This is my gift back to my people. So I urge everyone to read, especially the young people, because we need to know our laws. We need to know our treaties. We need to know our rights. Because we're still Senecas. We're still on our ancestral land. We still have our language. We still have our ceremonials. We still eat traditional foods. We have those things yet. We're still a distinct people. But we need to know those things that'll stop Kinzua Dam from happening again. So mark my word, this book is a warning. It's a warning to the young people that there will come a day when they will come for our land again. And I need everyone to be ready. And I'm so glad we got friends here with us tonight, good friends. We've got friends that will stand with us. I've seen a T-shirt, stand with Seneca, stand with us. We're gonna make it. We're gonna make it. So this is my portion of why. I hope I was clear enough why I write. I've got another book in the works, 2 books, maybe 3. It just takes a lot out of me. One of the best compliments I ever had when I wrote this first book, I came to this place here and I sat here, and my friend Anna Mae Printup, she said, this is not Steve Gordon's books. This is our book. This is ours. It belongs to you. This third book I wrote, my brother, Mo John, he texted me and says, brother, I read your book. I laughed and I cried. I mostly cried. That made me feel good. Because that's what I need you to feel, is that emotion. Don't let it happen again. Giwayis.
Yeah.
I think I better stand too. I've waited my whole life to come here. I usually can speak without getting nervous, but tonight I was nervous. I didn't know what to bring. I didn't bring any leather craft. I make quite a few things, and I didn't know what to talk about. And I decided to bring a brick. A couple days ago, it's really heart-wrenching when you can think about a longhouse burning. And it's terrorizing if you've been to weddings, funerals. In the Allegheny Longhouse, they used to vote there one time. I can remember all ceremonies I've ever been to. My brother sings. First of all, I'm not remembering my manners if I don't say Nyawa to each and every one of you for coming tonight and sharing a few minutes of your life with us. I'm so happy to see my Sundance brother, Tommy. Thank you for coming. We got a lot to talk about. When I was in the military, I was a 461 handling munitions. This was during Vietnam, and I got trained to load bullets, bombs, and missiles onto jets, and they killed a lot of people, and you had to deal with the thoughts of that. And they, in order to reinforce it, they showed you once a month how many men you killed in South Vietnam. And they were all brown-skinned people. And it was very, very hard to watch. It was very hard to think about it because a long time ago, our people were lined up and they suffered terribly too. Steve tells a story about, he tells many stories, and I'm so glad he has that gift. But yesterday, I took my grandson to, this is my grandson Etienne, Maurice's son, he's 11. And we went to the Longhouse location in Newtown. And I'm trying to think, what is Newtown without a Longhouse? Mm. I've gone there. My grandmother was from Newtown. Her name was Nora Bennett. She lived on Bennett Hill. And I can remember staying there for a month at a time at my aunt and uncle's place. And before I forget, I had the best uncles you can ever imagine. Bolly Huff, one of the best lacrosse players in our history. Sully Huff, they named a building after him because he was such a great teacher. He loved our people. Kenny Bennett, he taught me one lesson that drives my life. And before I went into service, he took me to Buffalo. I had to report to Buffalo, and I got drafted too, but I joined the Air Force. So I caught a bus from Buffalo, but the night before we went shooting pool. But he taught me something that I carry today, and I'll share with you because it's something that's very important to each and every one of us, whether we're Seneca, non-Seneca, we live in Salamanca, or Buffalo, or Gadagas, Cattaraugus. Don't ever forget who you are or where you're from. You all love your family. And I see my sister Terry here. Her dad, Frank, my The reason we say we're uncles and grandpas and cousins is because our way, we're all supposed to be family. And if we're family, why not? Say uncle, cousin, brother, sister. Why not? Whether we're related or not. And that's the way we should be. And it took me a long time to learn that, but I learned it. And I think we need to keep that value proceeding with the younger people. I don't see too many younger people here today, but it's something I think we can all share. So my story begins back getting out of the military. I learned how to handle munitions that exploded and killed people. And I didn't have a profession, so the war was ending in 1972. So they had a program where you could choose what you wanted to do when you got out. So I chose leathercraft. And I chose leathercraft because I've always done craft. I watched my relatives, and I used to pound splints for my grandmother's baskets. Believe it or not, we had a trading post on the other end of Salamanca. It was called McNamara's. Anybody remember that? Mm-hmm. Don't raise your hand too high because it dates you. She was a good lady. She bought our craft. And it's very hard to sell craft. It's like starving artists. Carson can attest to that. Sometimes you do good and sometimes you suffer. But craft is one of those things where John can attest to it too, right, John? And all our relatives, we try our best to provide something people might like. And I see my niece here working on, I'm sure, a beautiful moccasin that might be for sale or not, but no, it's a custom job. But that's how we are. And I think we should promote that for the future because we're losing it every day. We're too busy being in business and forgetting who we are and where we came from. But back to craft. I think that when we have a craft, it's not only working with your hands and producing products, it's writing and it's drawing. If you ever go to the airport, look on the floor, you'll see Carson's work. I think there's still some green signs toward New York City that says Southern Tier. He drew that for nothing, and the state didn't pay him a penny for it. These are my brothers I'm so proud of. And I wanted to speak last so I wouldn't have to speak too long because I'm so proud of them. I think they should shine tonight. And the one thing I would like to tell everyone here, though, is I want to donate this to the library. It came from the fireplace of the old longhouse. Yesterday they had it flattened, and they're going to rebuild. When we rebuilt, I tried to tell everyone how it happened in Allegheny, and my brother Steve can pick up on that a little bit. But if you can imagine, if you close your eyes for 1 minute and think, pretend you lived in the valley, a beautiful valley, and pretend you're going to lose that home where you live. The trauma that you go through is something you carry on your shoulder. You call it a chip, but in our case it's a log because we lost everything. And I think it's important that we teach the younger people what we went through so it won't happen again. And that's thanks to Terry's dad, Frank Gona, John. I got into politics. And my dad told me we were hunting and we sat on a hillside. And he wasn't too interested in hunting, but we were looking over the valley, and they had these big bulldozers with giant chains with links this big, and they were knocking down trees and they'd push them up into a pile. They'd pour kerosene and fuel oil on it and burn them, and there was a smoke down the valley. It was like a war zone, and he cried. He was a gunner's mate in World War II. He was a wrestler. He was a strong man. I didn't like that. And my grandmother passed too before she moved here to Jimtown. And we carry this with us. And my fight is to not let that happen again. And the Creator does. The Creator has a good sense of humor. I never thought at my age I'd be in politics again. And here I am. I thank everyone for helping and making that possible, because I think now we need to teach the younger people what we've been through, so that as they carry on in the modern fights, which may be in the courtrooms, or it may be in the debate rooms or in the newspapers, that will be more educated, will be more ready to save our culture, to save our land, and everything it takes for us to continue to be who we are. I got many stories about almost everyone I'm looking at tonight. I don't even know where to begin. But I don't want to take too much time. I just wanted to let everybody know. I didn't bring any leathercraft. I wasn't thinking about that. Marshall, he's a good crafts person. Sue Gray did some pamphlets about the communities, even Ownerville. And I thank you for that, because there's not many people that live in Ownerville. I remember Balva and Snow Street. We'd all get on a bus, and it was a good ride, and we had a lot of good times. And I just go back through that nostalgia, because that's who I am and where I come from. I think it's important that as we decide individually who you are, where you come from. I always say I'm from Salamanca, but I might start saying Jamestown, because we got a young lady there, Jimerson girl from Ownerville. She's going to JCC, and the mayor of Jamestown agreed to fly the Seneca flag, Haudenosaunee flag, and I was so proud. And they loved it, and they want to know more about our history. And I think we have that to teach. And in Ownerville, there used to be a stockade. It was called Stopping Place. And it was a great man. His name was Theodore Ted Jackson. And he taught us all the time. He was on the tribal council. And the Jackson family came from Ownerville. And it was a large family. And there were many large families that I don't think they survived the move, or the removal, we call it. And I see the Pierce family represented here tonight. I have great memories about Ownerville. I can go into that some other time, but tonight is a time for my brothers and their artwork and their craft. And I guess out of the group, I'm the historian, because I remember when we had to move our fire from Cold Spring to Steenburg. And I told that to the people in Newtown like yesterday, so that they were afraid. They were, when your place of worship, let's say it that way, I don't want to get in trouble, but I'm just saying we pray there. And we all go there to be together, and it's where we meet as a community and do things together for each other. And we pray. But when that's taken away from us, it's going to be reborn. They made the longhouse in Steenburg larger. And they'll probably make the Newtown longhouse maybe a little bit bigger, because they had a stone in the corner that said 1920 or 24. And if you can imagine the population then to compare to what it is now, 8,500 plus. When I was in politics in the 70s, it was 4,800, so I figure 1920s, it might have been half of that. So we are growing at our own pace. And that means our religion is growing too. So that's a good thing. That's a wonderful thing. And our mothers and the women are all responsible for that because we are a matrilineal society. And Steve let you know what his mother meant to him. My mother just passed. And when your parents pass, you become the elder. And that's difficult. And some of us have a hard time learning like me. I got to make the same mistake twice, not once, but twice. And that leads to problems. But I finally, in my old age, I don't get in too much trouble anymore, which is a great thing. And I urge each of you to talk to each other, work with each other. And if there's any hard feelings, let it go. A very, very beautiful woman taught me one time, her name was Rovina Abrams. She's in the nursing home in Randolph. Is that okay to say that? Salamanca, no? And Awe Onje So means let it go. Go home and let your problems go. Don't hold it inside you. Don't carry it like we did with that chip on our shoulder, because it'll hold you back. And my brother gave you a good example of our history here, and I'm so proud of him. So we got many more questions, and I apologize, Glenda, I went over my time.
You didn't.
Appreciate everyone coming, and let's keep talking, and if there's any questions, we can talk later. Yama.
We've listened to how these gentlemen have all got their beginnings, and it's very important. Culture is very important, community is very important, and we have a big problem with our children. And I know that Carson and Steve are working on something together, and Mo is collaborating with them. And I have a question for the three of them, and the discussions they've been having, they've been just wonderful. I enjoy listening to them. So the question is, how are we going to help our children?
One of the things that I've been looking at and focusing on is to do some coloring books that have to do with our history and our culture, because there's no coloring books out there for our children that can tell them and help them learn about who we are. So I want to start at that level and produce coloring books that can be provided, and then also step to the higher age group and provide books with that, and all of it having artwork that can be produced by our communities. That's what I'd like to see happen. I think that would help us to continue in our what I call survival, because that's what we're dealing with. Is if we ignore our history and our culture, we're going to end. We're going to stop. We're going to stop to exist. One of the things that we've done not recently is our nation was using, as an example, our nation was using a Western style headdress as its emblem, and that began in the 40s or 50s, and it had to do with St. Bonaventure asking if they could use our history and our culture, and then somehow that kind of slid over to us, and we're using that. And our museum was developing, and that was one of the questions that I learned and I saw. So I've been focusing on, or at that time I focused on replacing that Western style headdress with our modern, or with, today is modern, with a gustoet. And that is part of our identity, and that's what's important. There's so much more that needs to be done. So that's just the beginning, just something to think about.
My contribution to this kind of question is, it's our responsibility to teach our children. It used to be that a mother would be a child's first teacher. A child, male or female, would stay at their mother's side until the son's voice changed, or until the daughter had her first period. They would learn during that time from their mother. They would learn about patience. They would learn about respect. They would learn about contributing to the good of the community. They would also learn is how they all belong. They would all, we're like my brother just said, we're all family. That comes from the mother teaching her children. When they get of that age, when they change, the boy would be given to the uncle. He would physically be given to the uncle, and the uncle would then begin the training of a warrior, of a provider, of someone that preserves that bloodline. The mother would give the daughter to an aunt, who would then teach that girl how to become a provider, a preserver, and learn how to proclaim. Women in our society have always had a strong voice, always. By her proclamation, she can decide who the next leader will be. She can decide if we will go to war or if there will be peace. She will decide all matters of land. It's still within our Constitution. It requires 3/4 of the vote of the mothers of the nation to decide what to do with our land. It's in our Constitution still. Because there's one good form, there's a good sentence in the preamble of this Constitution that I'm sure a lot of you aren't familiar with. And what it says is that we will honor our traditions. That honor is there because that's what brought us to this point. Our grandfathers knew and our grandmothers knew this day was coming. This new book that I wrote was originally going to be called Cold Springs, The Teachings. Me and my brother were talking on the phone one day and he said, "Brother, the world's changing." I said, "That's it. That's it. Our world is changing. We're dinosaurs. The kids don't even see us anymore. This is their world. This is the world of our kids right here. They're not getting that opportunity to hear what I heard from my grandfathers. That's why I say we need to talk to our kids. Mothers, you need to direct your kids. You need to tell your children what you expect of them, what you want them to be. That's what my great-grandmother done to her boys. She said, "You're going to be a speaker, you're going to be a singer, you're going to be a politician." She directed them that way, told them. We don't do that anymore. We just hand our kids over to the school system and say, "Here's my child." As babies, we send them to daycare, babysitters. When they get a little older, we send them to preschool. Then we send them to 13 years of schooling. And then when they do something wrong later in life, we say, "What happened? What happened to my child?" What happened is you didn't teach them. You didn't tell them what's right and what's wrong. You need to talk to your children. We all need to talk to our children, to tell them, as my brother Carson said, who we are. Lehman Dowdy said, first, learn who you are. Find out who you are. Then become all that you're capable of becoming. But it begins with that communication. And we all know our society's breaking down. We all know that. Our world is changing. My great aunt, Corinne Red-Eye, says, right now, the devil is running the country. The devil is running our country. The greatest trick that the devil ever played on mankind was to convince us that he does not exist. It's very real. We're seeing it. When you turn your televisions on, you see it every day on the news. It's hard to watch TV. My wife doesn't like to watch the news. It's always horrible. It's terrible. But that's the world we're living in now. And why? Because we don't tell our kids what we want from them. We don't teach them about respecting the home. We don't teach them the value of family. As a politician myself, I learned early on there's 4 things necessary to retain our sovereignty. Senator Daniel Inouye from Hawaii at the time stated, you need 4 things to be recognized as a sovereign nation. You need a form of proper government. We have that. 1848, the Seneca Nation of Indians formed. It's in this Constitution. We established the nation. Number 2, you have to have a land base. We have a land base established by the Treaty of 1794, the Canandaigua Treaty. The 3rd thing, we need to have a history. We have a proud history. We've got treaties. We had Red Jacket, Corn Planter, Gayasuta, Ganyadayo, Handsome Lake. We have a history, a rich history. The most important thing, you need to have a language and a culture. You need to have a language and a culture to distinguish you as a separate race. Not as a nationality, as a race of people. And that's who the great Seneca Nation of Indians is. If any one of those 4 things should collapse, they can abrogate every treaty that we have. They can tell us we're no different than any other nationality that's out there. We need to know spiritually who we are. We need to remind ourselves who we are and honor one another, respect one another, say hello to each other, genuinely ask, Yahweh Scana, are you thankful that you're well? Are you thankful that you're well? It's a question, it's become a cliche, like, hey, how you doing? That's not what Yahweh Scana means. It's a question. Are you thankful that you are well? Yes, I'm thankful that I am well. And are you thankful? That's our first obligation as human beings when we meet. See, we're losing those little things. Dar said everybody can say, Yahweh Scana. Everybody can say, then say, I see you again. But do we really feel it? Do we mean it when we say it? Like Alice in Wonderland, the book says, say what you mean and mean what you say. Those are strong words. I don't advocate going back to the old days. We can't do that. Geraldine Green, an elder from Newtown, says, we can't go back and get what we lost. We can only go forward with what we got. So let's go forward, but let's take everybody with us. In '64, we all suffered together. If that's what it's going to take in 2020, 2023, let's do it. Let's bring everybody with us. We're the Seneca Nation of Indians, and it says in the treaty, and their friends. You're all included. You're our friends. Everybody, our friends are included within this thing. When you heard my brother do the Ganonyuk this morning, giving thanks for all of creation, you were included. You heard it. You felt it. You were included. So when I say to you, Nyawiskana, you can say, Agala, yes, I'm thankful that I am well. I was able to come here today. That's how we should have greeted each other this morning, and I believe Glenda did. So that's what it's about. You hear about these people saying, well, the billionaires are going to take us back to Mars or Jupiter or somewhere. Why? Remember what my great-grandmother said, why are we going to leave from here? Everything's here. Why we got to go somewhere else? Can you afford it? I can't. They said it's going to cost you millions of dollars to get on that spaceship. Ain't no Indians going there. Nobody I know. Let's see where we're at. Lemondar Dowdy said, there's only one race of people. The human race. That's us. That's you, that's me, that's you guys. It's all of you. You're all included. We're all included in this. Gandhi says, be the change that you want to see in the world. Let it start with you. Look in the mirror. Again, Dar would say that every day. Look at yourself in the mirror. Who do you see? Who is that person looking at you? You like that person? Is that person a good person? So my advice, let's go forward. Let's keep going forward. But let's always remember who we are. How did we get here? Because we're going to be here. They used to say in the 60s, the only people that are going to be left when this world ends is an insect and an Indian. Yeah, just us. But again, we're taking every one of you with us. You guys are going to stay here with us. We'll just stay here. Let's work together. This is a big problem. I don't got the answers, but I'd like to sit in the room with people and say, let's do something. So when my brother said, let's meet tomorrow, let's talk about this stuff. That's how we got into this thing. We started talking. That's what it's going to take. Because I'll tell you what, if I got a whole moment to go, I can go over here a long time. I want to tell you a sad story. They asked me and Dara if we would come to the school and talk to the kids. They said, someone needs to talk to the kids. Would you guys come and talk to the kids? They need help. So we went there and we thought, well, we said, what seems to be the problem here? And kids, we were strangers to them. They didn't know what to say, so they were quiet. But this one little kid raised his hand, a non-Indian child raised his hand. He said, do you know I almost killed myself last Thanksgiving? I thought, wow. Okay? He said he started feeling the angst of a child, a teenager. He didn't know he didn't wear the best clothes. He wasn't in that clique. So he went home and he thought he was going to end it all. He took his father's rifle and put it on a bed, and he kept trying to reach for the trigger, but he couldn't reach it. So he called his sister in and said, can you pull this trigger for me? And she screamed. She ran out of the room, told her mom and dad, and all of a sudden the door breaks down, and here comes their mother and father, and the father is just ranting and says, what's wrong with you? What the hell's wrong with you? We give you this nice home. You got your own TV, you got a computer, you got a phone. What the hell else do you want? The kid says, will you talk to me? Will you talk to me? I couldn't talk. I didn't know what to say. They're asking for people to talk to them. They want to hear a human voice, not just this. They want you to talk to them. Otherwise, everything they learn is on this thing and it isn't good. I saw that kid maybe 3 years later at Dunkirk Fair. He saw me and he came running right up to me. He said, hey, I'm happy now. My mom left my dad, and he said, we moved out of Salamanca, and I'm happy now. Wow. So sometimes change helps. Our world is changing. We got to change with it. Keep talking. Just talk. We got to do more of this. And I thank Glenda for finding us this place where you could all gather. You mean the world to us, every one of you. I don't want to lose any more kids. Let's help them. Let's help each other. Let's contribute. Let's all be a part of it. You step up.
My brother's next book is going to be Scary Stories. He is a great storyteller. He's got many scary stories too. But basically, I'm a pessimist. Must be some reason, but I admit it. And we're talking about how do we help the children. My grandson's here, so I gotta be careful. My method of helping the children would be to find heroes, women, men, children, any race, any age, that have proven who they are and how they are, and help other people. My brother talks about Lehman Dar. I used to play softball with him. He was a great second baseman. And we grew up together in the same hill. And I knew him maybe 4 generations from the time I can remember till getting close to when I can forget now. So if a generation is 20 years, it's hard to talk about generations because you're supposed to learn. There's many prophecies that we hear. And I guess my dad used to talk about when the world ends all the time. Maybe that's why I'm a pessimist. But he used to tell me that we have prophecies. How many of you have studied prophecies about the end? If if there's such a thing, the end. And I sort of see Mother Earth now showing us who's boss with the fires and the floods and everything that's happening on Earth right now. And I'm not trying to scare anyone, but because I'm scared. And I'm glad I'm old, because I'd hate to be a youngster, but I see people losing their homes like what we're talking about in '64. People have to move because the water moved them. The water destroys their houses. Ours were burned down, but they were all destroyed, and we have to pick up and start over. And I believe, what is it called, metamorphosis, when a caterpillar turns into a butterfly? Things can change for the better. And that's not really pessimism, it's optimism. And I think we need to do that. And the answer is the young people. The young people should be taught what it takes to survive. And I think we're responsible for that, and I think we need to take what we really cherish and share it. Give it to the next generation, because we have a lot to offer. We've seen, my brother didn't like grease and potatoes, but I did. Oinchiat, we'd call salt pork. I'd live for that. We would have pancakes, and my grandma would say, pretend it's a steak. And I would pretend it's a steak, so we'd dip it in the grease and eat it. So tough times are tough, but you live through it. Somehow you live through it. And we had wild onions, we had all types of milkweed. We had all kind of good veggies growing in our front yard. But when we got moved away from our valley, our beloved valley, Allegheny, Ohio, beautiful water, that was taken. And you live on a hillside or you live in a swamp, you got a different environment. So we all have to figure out what's going to matter to us, because we like to use a microwave and open cans, and I'm talking about myself. We get spoiled. Or we go to the buffet. But I used to like home cooking, fried bread, boiled potatoes, and oinchiat. And to me, that's the best. It wasn't really conducive to maybe good health or your physique as you get older, but it's who we are and where we came from. And we need to teach. And our dads used to be best friends. I look at Tommy, and I can remember them laughing. We need to laugh, find things to laugh about, funny things, because we're not laughing as much as we used to. And part of that is dancing. Now, I got a bad leg. I got a good excuse. I can't dance too good, too long, or hardly at all anymore. But when you learn to dance, whether it's polka or escanier or any other type of dance, you forget your problems, and it's a good way to think good thoughts. And I think if we can think of ways for the young people and put it on paper, how we can share that for the young people, that's a start. And I think each and every one of you have a story to tell, and you'll be up here soon, and you have to figure out what mattered in your life that you want to talk about. I see a lot of wonderful craft people here, and I'm sure you've made many different things. And my first lacrosse stick was given to me by Francis Kettle. My dad had to go see him one time, and he was surrogate and working on a case and needed information. He was the president of the Seneca Nation. And he looked at me, and I was just walking around in his wood shop. It was up in Newtown Hill, and he said, you got a stick? And I said, no. He said, you want one? I said, yeah. So he went in a corner and dusted one off and gave me one. I was just a little guy, and it was a short stick. I don't know what happened to it, but I used it. I wore it out. We never had a team here in Allegheny, but we played a lot. We weren't organized. Our game here was softball, baseball, football, and we had great athletes. And they really shined. It's like Salamanca is a powerful little city. Salamanca used to compete against Olean, Jamestown, Bradford, every big town around here. And half the time they would, more than half the time they would win. We had great coaches, great players, but that's what we're talking about, the unity. And I think if we talk unity, that's another thing we need to teach the young people. How you can solve things by sitting at a table and talking problems. If you got a bias, if you got a problem, talk about it. But the hardest part is to listen. And that's what we need to work at, listening. And it's so difficult. So I've got a little bit different philosophy, but to me, to help the children, we need to help them be good, free thinkers and to enjoy life. Because it seems to be getting harder. I've been to too many funerals lately, overdoses, murders. I've seen a lot of things in the last 10 years I wish I didn't. And that all takes a toll. But we need to keep going. We're survivors. Hanungito. Ni Kayasa. My name means a will to live. And I never knew that till later in life. I just told you my name. But we all have inner thoughts and strengths. But if it really matters about the future, the young people are the answer. We got some young people here that are listening, just like we used to listen when we were little. But we listen to sorrow and crying, losing your land and your culture and your homes and your relatives all at once. These books tell the truth. And it's a history that I think everyone should know. And I think that hopefully after tonight you'll get to know a little bit more about Allegheny, Ohio, and you'll know why it's important, where we came from. My brothers are the best men I know. Carson changed our philosophy about our mascot. And it brought together all the students and all the teachers in the city of Salamanca and the community of Jimtown and Allegheny together to fight for our logo, a warrior with a gustoet, not a Western headdress. For 42 years I was married to Lakota. My son is Lakota Seneca. My grandson is Lakota. And we all have a rich heritage. And we should be proud and we should carry that on and teach the young what that means, the good stuff. It's hard because there's so much trauma in our lives. And I think if we think of the good stuff and keep promoting that, I remember many stories to tell, but tonight we're running out of time already, and I talk too much anyway, so I want to sit down. And I want to thank Brenda, too, for giving us an opportunity. Yeah.
Would it be helpful for the children early in their ability to write, to be encouraged to write their own stories? This is an excellent thing, good question that I think if we gave this to our official Seneca Nation newsletter, it would encourage those kids to begin writing. I would like to read what they're thinking. Maybe, because I've always encouraged our children whenever I get in an assembly is if there's something within our society today that you don't like, you have that ability to change it. This would be an excellent opportunity for those children to write down in our newsletter what they see, what they feel, and then we can address it. Yes, Wendy?
We had classes back in the 70s, and Carson was in that. You were teaching your art back then, and we had kids from here and kids from Cattaraugus,
Right.
and we would switch by the week. They would come out here for the week, and then we'd go out there for the week for their classes. And they did the art, they did all kinds of crafts, we talked to them about things, and there was quite a few kids that did go on, like Johnny Rotten. He was one of them, and he's doing really great work now. But I mean, if we encouraged our kids like that and taught them the different arts in that, like classes, I think that would help again. We always wanted him to teach another art class, but
We're getting too old.
Stephen, I didn't put it on there, but one of the things I was thinking when I wrote that is that when those students write and then they bring it home, it should go home, and that can start those conversations.
Right. For those of you who don't know him, this is Bob Brackman. He's, in fact, he's a writer as well. So he knows the value of writing. But we will certainly make sure that this goes through the proper channels and gets to our newsletter people.
Yeah. Was there any other questions that you have written down? All right. Well, thank you very much for coming. There are desserts. We have coffee, water, tea, hot chocolate.
Carson.
And
you too.
thank you very much, gentlemen, for